What is a privacy analyst? In this video, you're going to learn about the cybersecurity role of privacy analyst. So you're going to learn about a general overview of the job. So what is a privacy analyst? You'll learn some different job titles that you might be able to search for on different job boards like LinkedIn or Indeed. And you'll also learn the general responsibilities of this type of role, what to expect as far as salary for the US, the India, and the UK, as well as some of the tools you might be using in the role. And do you need certifications or a college education, or is this another type of cybersecurity job that you can just go ahead and start working in? So let's just talk about what is a privacy analyst. Well, basically this is going to be someone that's going to handle ensuring that the organization's policies or procedures and the actual day-to-day practices are complying with different laws and regulations specifically related to data privacy. So whereas like a GRC analyst, if you watched that video before, that's a little broader thing. It includes privacy, but here we're just a very privacy-focused professional. So you're going to be looking for things like identifying and assessing different privacy risks to the organization, as well as helping to identify and implement, as well as monitor, so continuous monitoring of different privacy controls to help mitigate any risks that you identify. So there's a lot of different types of job titles available for this role. You might see data privacy analyst, information privacy analyst. If you're looking for a specific type of regulation, then you might see things like if you're looking for healthcare, you might see HIPAA privacy analyst, privacy policy analyst, etc. Below this video in the description, I'm going to also list a number of other potential job titles so you can go look on different job boards and try to find your very first privacy role. So what does a privacy analyst actually do? What are some of those job responsibilities that you might do on like a day-to-day or a weekly basis? One of those is going to be developing or helping to develop and also implement and update different privacy policies and procedures across the organization. So essentially what you're going to be working on here is aligning privacy policies and procedures with the overall business objectives, as well as any industry best practices out there, depending on what you're working in, as well as any legal requirements. So again, HIPAA law in the healthcare industry, high tech, etc. If you're in the financial services, things like Sarbanes-Oxley. If you're also in auditing things, SOC 2. If you're in financial services, PCI DSS. If you're in the energy industry, NERC, etc., etc. So there's a lot of different regulatory things organizations have to be compliant with depending on the areas that they specialize in. You'll also be doing things like privacy risk assessments. So essentially just identifying and assessing potential privacy risk. Could be things that are privacy risk leading to like a data breach or unauthorized access to personal information. So for example, data loss prevention. So if we think of healthcare again as an example, then if I'm working in a hospital as a nurse, I don't necessarily need to see every patient's information because I'm not working with those patients. So you would be the type of person that would assess, is there a risk in this system of somebody without the right access gaining access to a patient chart when they shouldn't have that access? And if so, you'd be that person leading the charge of identifying different security controls you might put in place to help protect against me as a bad nurse trying to access everybody's information. You're also going to be looking for compliance across the organization, again, around things like HIPAA, SOX, PCI DSS, etc., and the list goes on. And really you're trying to identify those compliance issues because the organization can face heavy fines. If we look at NERC as an example in the energy industry, potential fines could be $1 million per incident per day. So it's very critical for an organization to have you on the team to help assess this risk to privacy. You also usually do some kind of training. So guidance/training is what I would call it. So it could be educating end users on privacy and what they can do. Could be educating executive teams or senior leadership. Could be educating customers on what you're doing as an organization to help protect, against data breaches, etc. You could also be working for a consulting company that then advises of a lot of different companies. So the training could encompass a lot of different things depending on the particular role that you're working in. Of course, you'll be usually looped in most cases, if you're an internal employee, on incident response. So especially around like a privacy breach or unauthorized access or disclosure of information, they'll usually loop you in some capacity to help determine the cause and then make a plan for the future, essentially, right? What can we implement to remediate these potential issues moving forward? And then wrapped up in all of this is you obviously need to keep abreast of any new laws, regulations, industry standards, etc., that are around data privacy. And we'll talk a little later on in this video about some different certifications you might want to explore. So what about salary? Well, starting out in the US, 53,000 to six figures. I will say that most of the people I know working in this role when they first started out were really around 70,000 a year. So I think this is a little low number that some of the salary websites where I pull this data from have. But I think in most cases in the US, you could probably get about 70,000 or more per year starting out. In the UK, 30 to 80,000 pounds, and these are all annual salaries, by the way. And then in India, the rupee, 600,000 to about 1.5 million Indian rupees. So it can be potentially a lucrative career, especially if you decide to specialize in any particular areas and get really, really good, for example, in healthcare. So what kind of tools do you commonly use? Well, there's a variety of like actual industry tool names out there, but some of the typical tools you're going to use are around data loss prevention, so helping protect any data against unauthorized access or theft. Some of the ones you can use are ForcePoint, Symantec, Experion. This is by no means endorsement of any of these. I just want to make that clear. But these are some of the common ones you might see out there, as well as compliance management tools, things like OneTrust, HyperProof, Archer, etc. So there's a lot of different tools you might use. It just kind of depends on what the organization is using. If you're brand new to all of this and you want to go explore, just do a Google search for data loss prevention tools or compliance management tools. Find ones with like a free version or a free trial that you can use, and then download it, play around with it a little bit. You don't have to be an expert in these tools for your very first job. What about education, certifications, all that good stuff? You don't need college degrees for this particular job. There are some degrees I've seen out there, and as well as certificates, like Harvard has a certificate around data privacy and things like that. You don't need any of that stuff. If you have the budget for it, great. If not, that's cool too. You also don't need any certifications. I have some listed here. I'll talk about these here briefly, but you don't need certifications. You really just need to take a look at privacy. So buy a book on privacy, like CDPSC is another certification, the Certified Data Privacy Security Engineer. You can buy that book on Amazon. I think it's maybe 30, 40 bucks, and not to take the certification, but to study the information in it, because that'll help you understand what is data, what's some of the data classification or the types of data, how that's relevant, and how you can search for different tools that can help you secure your organization better. So a lot of these certs, you can get them as you get your job and get some experience, but you can also use them as a leverage point starting out in your career to learn the knowledge in these certs without taking the actual cert exam. It's a lot cheaper to buy a book or find a cheap course online to learn the basics of it. So when you go in for a job interview, you can actually talk the talk a little bit and impress the hiring manager. But these other ones here I have listed, the CIPP, Certified Information Privacy Professional. That's from a place called IAP, which is the International Association of Privacy Professionals. Now, this one they have for different regions of the world. So, for example, the US has one, EU has one, there's one for Asia, etc. So depending on where you live, this might be a good one to get, but this is one that you probably want to have a couple years experience before you get. There's also the CIPT, which is a Certified Information Privacy Technologist. That's another IAP one. This one focuses more on the technical aspects. So where CIPP focuses more on the holistic laws, regulations, principles, things like privacy program management, the CIPT focuses more on like the actual technical hands-on around data privacy. So things like encryption, access control, incident response, etc. And then CISSP, or the Certified Information Systems Security Professional, that one you need at least 5 years experience to go actually get it. So I would recommend as a starting point, you can get a book or a course on it and learn the information, but don't go I don't recommend at least you go try to sit for that exam until you have 5 years experience. Now you can go sit for it, but you won't actually get the designation until you have that 5 years experience. So it's really just kind of, in my opinion, a waste of money to actually go sit for the exam until you get that experience. But it is a good one because it does cover a good broad topics of around security management, access control, network security, etc. So it gives you a good holistic view again on general security that you would need to understand. So some key takeaways here from this video: data privacy analyst, you're going to be obviously focused on data privacy. So again, buy some books or some cheap courses on it. I will be pushing out some, depending on when you're watching this video, I will be pushing out some content around data privacy, data classification, etc. So you can kind of understand how that ties into risk management. at a later date, or depending on, again, when you're watching this video, you might already be seeing that out there. So go take a look at our channel to see if that's out there already. This is a career where it does have some decent compensation, as well as good news is it's a non-technical career, at least for the most part. Now, you do need to understand some terminology and things like that, but you don't have to be a strong hands-on technical, like super hacker to get this type of job. So I highly recommend it if you're someone that's maybe coming from accounting background or nursing or any type of job where you kind of had to use your brain, follow processes, work with different regulations, maintain your work towards those regulations, secure information, but you don't want to get super technical. This is a really, really good job for you to check out.